Welcome to disc number 2 of Secrets of Champions 5. When we talk about roads to victory, I obviously spent a lot of time on the road gathering the film you see here. And when you visit dozens of fanciers, sometimes 3 a day, it's hard to capture all the detail you'd like to. But if anything, after seeing the profiles on our first disc, I hope you too understand the enormous variety of lofts, methods, and management styles that are winning today. It makes me even more amazed at how magnificent and adaptable racing pigeons are, and how some can rise to become champions from so many different environments. In the upcoming program, the goal was to bring you the latest thinking of top trainers on feed, motivation, and young bird methods. And I wanted to share a couple of thought-provoking observations you'll probably hear more about in the years ahead. But first, what's on the mind of some of these top competitors when it comes to the most essential element of powering a winning athlete? Fuel. I think you'll be interested in what they have to say about Fat Thursday.
It must be all correct. The food and the training are really the most important thing in every sport. So why should it be different than pigeon sport? It's not.
There are 3 main components to the pigeon food. There's your protein, your fat, and carbohydrates. Of course, there's other things in there. There's your minerals and your vitamins. But what you really need to think about is the big 3: protein, fat, and carbohydrates. Different races need different percentages of these mixtures.
Proteins has to do everything with building. What is building? Building is recuperation, for example, after a race. Building is breeding. Building is molting. That's all building. Those are the bricks.
I think pigeon racing is a simple enough method. It's made difficult by fanciers. And I always work along the basis of when they return from a race, they need to recover the muscles from the exertion. By doing that, you give them protein. During the week, after you've given the protein, they want carbohydrates. And at the end of the week, they want the fats, which gives them the energy.
The show is already that proteins is for building, breeding, molting, and so on, recuperation, and that fats are effective for performing, for energy, for racing season.
You're going back in 1999 when basically carbohydrate feeding in this country was just starting. And with the young birds, when we put it on, it was like a new thing. It had all started. Fats, carbohydrates, nobody had really heard about it.
Years ago, and I'm saying maybe 10 years ago, a lot of fanciers would what they called carbohydrate load prior to the race. And it normally meant up to 60–65% maize in a widowwood mixture, and the last 2 or 3 days of the week to load the pigeon with sugars. But then we wasn't really that aware that fats were the main fuel for flying.
The difference between the human sports is that in the human sports the athlete, he can eat while he is cycling every hour if he wants to, every half an hour, but for a bird it's not possible. You have to put all energy in the tank before it's leaving, and that's a little difference. So we started to try to find out how it works, and we started with it with the birds that are flying during winter or summer from one to the other continent. They are flying for hours. They don't eat either, so we tried to find out how that system works, and it was a little bit different. We found out that they are using fatty acids and not carbohydrates, so we tried to stock as much as possible fatty acids in the birds.
Carbohydrates are a form of natural sugars, and it's the natural sugars that gives them the short burst of speed, whether it's escaping from a hawk, leaving the transporter, trying to gain height. It's the natural sugars that do that. But once they've actually gained that height or evaded the hawk, they then go back onto the main fuel, which is fat. And fat burns at a steady rate, whereas sugar burns at a very fast rate.
to come out of the basket, the bird will need energy. He uses sugar and the white muscles to come out of the basket to win height and to win speed. Once the bird is on that speed, it will go over to the glycogen to use as energy. It's flying fast on the sugars. With the glycogen, the speed is going a little bit down. After 1 hour, the bird starts to use only fatty acids. At that moment, the speed is slowing down a little bit as well.
Fat is pure energy to perform. Be careful, I didn't say that during a breeding and a molting pigeons don't need fat. I didn't say that. But it's more important to have a good protein level than a good fat level. And in the racing season, it's good to have a good fat level than a good protein level. That's very important.
Fats, without the fats, they can barely fly 500 miles because they've run out of fuel. But with the fats, they can fly. They can realise their potential. Basically, they have to be bred to fly it. But they need. It's like having a Ferrari or a Mercedes car and putting no fuel in it. It'll only go a certain distance. You know, and it's exactly the same with these. Don't matter how well they're bred if they've got no fuel. And the fats is the fuel. It used to be thought that it was all sugars, but it's not. Sugars is soon used, and then it's all fats after that.
The fat capacity is about 27 grams, but it depends on the condition of the bird as well, you know. A bird that is in a very good condition and a very good shape, it will use less. If you know a bird uses carbohydrates only for 1 hour, for the rest they are using fatty acids, then you can make the calculation. You know, if the bird has to fly 6 hours, you will know you will need 18 grams of fatty acids. That's because the birds are using 3 grams an hour to fly.
With sprint pigeons, if you overdo the fats, it definitely slows them down. You basically only need to top them up, where long distance pigeons, they need it over a longer period of time. So it's like a reserve fuel you're using, not a quick burst fuel.
For short distance you only need carbohydrates, so you better take or make a mixture with not that much fatty grains and seeds in it. You better take maize and things like that. It's long chain carbohydrates, so on that level, on the carbohydrates, the birds will fry the fast. The problem is you can only do a stockage for 1 hour. After that hour you have to change to fatty acids. The best burning fatty acids are the short fatty acids. They are used by the bird in another way as the long chain fatty acids. Every bird that needs to fly, it is using energy. So it's very important to know what energy a bird uses. First 10 minutes they are using sugars. After that they are using carbohydrates, and after 1 hour they are starting to burn fatty acids. Fatty acids, they can go as long as they want. They use them for about 3 grams for 1 hour to fly. So you can know more or less if you have a competition and you can do the calculation and the bird will maybe fly 6 hours. You know you will need at least 18 grams of fatty acids to get rid in time from the competition.
They need to be in good condition when they come out of the basket, as well as when they need to be good obviously when they go in. But it's better if they're on a rising plane and they come out better than when they went in, or at least the equal. And I think that is why, if you build up in the last 4 feeds, or if it was an extreme distance, maybe the last 6 feeds, that's absorbed into the body, you know, while they're away.
You don't really need to know much about the feed to get your pigeons home from a race, but to get that extra percentage performance out of them and to put you in the top 1% of the result, you really need to make an effort to look at it and see exactly what it is you're giving them.
If you give the fatty acids today, you will know the best energy in it will be 24 hours till 48 hours behind. You have feed the fatty acids. So if your bird has to fly on Saturday, you make them on donderdag, how do you say? If your bird has to fly on Saturday, then it's a good thing to put as much as you can fatty acids in the bird on Thursday, because it needs 24 hours, 48 before the glycogen is on his best. So that's the best energy for the bird. He can fly fast, very fast on that energy.